First, whether it's claiming that wind and solar is the cheapest form of power, or claiming that there's nothing to see in the government's $2.4 million payoff to Brittany Higgins, or claiming that Australia's relationship with China is very strong, the Albanese government is consistently into reality denial. Communist China is indeed our largest trading partner, with two-way trade exceeding $200 billion a year, but that doesn't mean that Beijing's our friend. No true friend would impose $20 billion worth of trade boycotts on Australia, as Beijing did for several years, after we had the temerity to seek a full international inquiry into the origins of the Wuhan virus. No true friend would have sailed a naval flotilla around Australia or conducted live fire exercises without any prior notice to the Australian government, something that former Army boss Ian Langford last night on the show was quick to call out.
You know, their ambition around modernising their nuclear deterrence, their ambition around reclaiming and controlling the South China Sea as sovereign waters to, again, the disagreement of the international community, and the presence of what the DG of ASIO talks about, foreign espionage activities that include up to sabotage on complex critical systems and key infrastructure, are all evidence of what's happening around us.
Nor would any true friend of this country shoot off flares and risk the lives of Air Force pilots flying surveillance planes in international airspace over the South China Sea, or have its naval ships use sonar to injure Australian Navy divers, again, operating in international waters. And no true friend would be mounting routine cyber attacks on Australian government systems and critical infrastructure, as the ASIO head has recently specified. Almost every organ of Australia's national security and defence apparatus has called out China for repeated acts of aggression against Australia, while our Prime Minister and his front bench cower in silence, fear of upsetting their mates in Beijing. Indeed, I can't think of any occasion where the Albanese government has specifically criticised any conduct of China, even though there's been any number of direct attacks on our trade, our communications, our freedom of movement and our personnel. Indeed, the Prime Minister himself has gone out of his way to avoid making any public criticism of Beijing, most recently refusing to issue a readout from his meeting last week with China's number 3, the chairman of the National People's Congress, who'd said in his public statement that they had discussed China's, quote, sovereignty over Taiwan. Now, to not give our media a briefing of the meeting with a senior Chinese leader held in Canberra, well, that's unheard of, particularly given the visit was accompanied with that warning from parliamentary security officials that MPs and staff were told to turn off their phones and avoid the Wi-Fi system for the whole time the Beijing delegation was in the Parliament House building. But don't think Albanese's cowardice has gone unnoticed internationally. Today, the former Japanese ambassador to Australia, Shingo Yamagami, called out Australia for its silence in the face of Beijing's latest bit of wolf warrior diplomacy. Yamagami-san, the former diplomat, well known for speaking up about China and Western cowardice with very un-Japanese-like frankness, was particularly focused on recent verbal attacks by Beijing on Japan's new Prime Minister. Now, Sanae Takahashi, the first woman to lead Japan, well, she's a conservative, and she's taken a tough stand against China's aggression from day one. A week ago, she declared that a Chinese attack on Taiwan might trigger a military response from Japan because, she said, and I quote, it could constitute a survival-threatening situation. Well, the rebuke from Beijing against her was quick and it was personal. In response, China's Consul General, who's based in the Japanese city of Osaka, said, and I quote, if you stick that filthy neck where it doesn't belong, it's going to get sliced off. Yet not a peep from Albanese to defend his Japanese counterpart against this extraordinary verbal assault. As Yamagami said today, imagine if a Chinese official, quote, demanded that the Prime Minister of Australia retract remarks made in our parliament, while the Consul General in Sydney posted his willingness to decapitate the PM on social media. Even Penny Wong, for all the talk of supporting women leaders, well, she declined to defend Prime Minister Takayashi. But why should she be surprised? Yet another speech from Wong highlighted the government's double standards here. After acknowledging Chinese, Russian, Iranian and North Korean cyber attacks on Australia, Wong said that Moscow, Tehran and Pyongyang would continue to sabotage and destabilise. Yet she left Beijing out of that list because she said they would merely, quote, continue to try and reshape the region according to their own interests. So all the other cyber attacks get called out for what they are, but it's kid gloves for her communist mates. Still, at least some officials are prepared to be honest about what we face in terms of challenges from China. Earlier this week, the outgoing head of the Office of National Assessment, so the peak national security assessment body, if you like, in Australia, his name is Andrew Shearer, he warned that Australia, quote, must be prepared for what may be coming.
Most consequentially, should deterrence break down, notwithstanding the efforts of our government and our allies, we would face a rising risk of major conflict in our region within the next decade. We have to act now if we are to be prepared for what may be coming.
Now, that bloke's got a seat at the National Security Committee of Cabinet. Thank God for a bit of truth-telling to all of us, all voters, for a change. Retired Brigadier Ian Langford again.
Part of the challenge here is to have an honest and frank assessment about how we manage our economic and our security relationship with China in an age where they're in competition with the US to be the single significant power in East and North Asia. And this will define very much Australia's future over the next 15 to 20 years. So listening to Andrew Shearer, making sober and frank assessments in terms of what are our interests and how we secure them in the context of a changing world is the number one role of the government, I think, right now.
The great pity is it's now left to the officials and the Army veterans, like former Brigadier Langford, to tell us the grim truth about what's really going on with China, and not the Prime Minister or the Foreign Minister, who at a minimum owe Australians a whole lot more honesty for once.